That's right, ladies and gentlemen. It is Commissioner Cooper, and I'm still down here in Miami licking my wounds from last night. But I'm back. I got to get myself up and get ready because we got week 2 to break down because I always got fantasy to lie back on at least. It's time for TSS Fantasy.
Yeah! Here we go!
It's time for TSS Fantasy.
It is Commissioner Cooper.
I could do a whole 49ers show right now.
Ready to rock out with my gavel out.
Oh yeah, baby!
Don't sleep on my Patriots email.
And we're ready for football. Is that
Joe Burrow with his wrist, I'm curious.
I find you guilty of all charges.
and although you consistent force in this
I must develop some really great chemistry.
DJ Chuck Bass.
This guy has been doing it ever since coming off.
I hope you like the web.
He's made 4 targets in all 3 of the webs.
Scored a touchdown this year.
You know, the great thing about being a football player is you don't have to take a shower to go to work.
There it is.
Oh, indeed. I like how little small circles that we're in. That's what it feels like.
Yeah.
I'm in now, indeed. And we're both on location. How crazy is that? Let's welcome into the studio Mr. Sophistication himself, Angelo Duke. Welcome in, my friend.
Yeah, 2 important things. First of all, at some point we need to talk about the hair that AI gave you in that intro. I think that's we got to talk about that. And then 2, very important job for all you guys watching tonight. If you see anybody behind me, I need you to put it in the chat because I am currently doing this from under a highway in Manchester, New Hampshire. So get at it. Keep me safe, everyone. Hashtag save Andrew.
Indeed. Keep Andrew safe will be the theme of the evening. All right, let's pay the bill first. If you are playing DFS, go to Underdog Fantasy, use the promo code TSS. We're going to double that deposit up to $100. Lots of great fun DFS plays to play as well. Always can check us out Sunday because we got some great insight free on that as well. Also, if you're looking for some championship bling for your fantasy champion, look no further than Pro Am Belts. If you're watching on YouTube, do us a solid, hit a subscribe, hit the like, hit a comment. Little things stopping you from doing it, big things popping for us when you do. All right, Andrew, reluctantly, let's get on to our first segue. Let's talk about the news. Well, Sunday night football happened.
Thursday night.
Whatever the hell it happened. I don't even know what day it is. I feel like Tua probably feels right now. Look, the Dolphins got spanked at home, 31-10, ultimate a beat down, as they like to say. Talking to the fantasy aspect of it, Josh Allen, 139 yards in the air because he didn't really need to do much. He got the touchdown. And only 2 yards rushing. Like I said, he didn't have to do much because it was James Cook night. He was cooking indeed, 78 yards on 11 carries. He had 2 TDs on the ground. And then I mentioned the touchdown pass by Josh Allen. It was to James Cook as they suckered the Dolphins defense into a middle blitz. Shakir was your number 1 receiver of the night, 5 receptions for 54 yards, not much going. Dalton Kincaid, 4 receptions, 33 yards, got hurt a little earlier in the game, but then came back. And I just wanted to shout out Curtis Samuel because we kept talking about him last week. One reception, 3 yards. Tua last night, as we know, he got hurt. But prior to that, 145 yards in the air, 3 INTs. The 2 carries, and obviously the one that was devastating to the Dolphins season and to Tua's possible career as well. So then Skylar Thompson came in, got 80 yards in the air on the Bills' backup defense. It was Achane night, though. At the end of the day, at being in the stadium, I mean, all we could hear was like, sit the guy down. Like, it's all you're doing is Achane. Like, this guy's not. The thing is, at the end of the day, 22 carries, 96 yards, 7 receptions for 69 yards and a TD. I think the ultimate message, though, in this, as far as the Dolphins' offense going forward, is that Achane's kind of proven that he can be that workhorse back that if you didn't know from last night, you definitely know now. Jonnu Smith, was the other second receiver because Achane was the number 1. 6 receptions for 53 yards. They need a third guy, and that might be the guy that they have Jalen Waddle had 4 receptions for 41 yards, and Tyreek Hill 3 receptions for 24 yards in the matchup. So obviously not a lot going there. All right, Drew, what are your thoughts on the matchup?
So first of all, if you read the Inside the Medical Tent article yesterday and then you made your lineup decisions based off of what I said about A-Shane and Mostert, whoops is all I can say. I got it wrong. I thought A-Shane would be limited if he did play. I felt like early in the season, I felt like there was no need, given the depth of their running back position, for them to really force him into what ended up happening. But hell, he obviously wasn't as hurt as we thought he might be. So great for A-Shane owners. We're going to talk about Tua. I don't want to spend too much time on Tua here because we're going to talk about him throughout the show. It's too big of a story. He wasn't having a great game before that, though. So, yes, it's easy to look at it and say this concussion, it makes sense. But let's be honest, this was a stinker from the start for the entire Miami Dolphins. The fact that Tyreek Hill is the stats he had, this was everybody's hurting from a fantasy standpoint. I'm also curious now to see, based off of even what Josh Allen was able to do. We started in week 1. QB number passing yards, average only around 200 yards. Everything is down. You can blame that on week 1, defenses and working into the schedule. Man, in a win like this, Josh Allen's still under 150 yards passing. I'm curious to see now for the rest of week 2. Is this a pattern that we're going to see this year? Is this something to pay attention to? If so, I think a lot of drafts are going to get blown up this season, and we are going to have a very interesting stretch through all these weeks this year.
Yeah, I mean, listen. At the end of the day, this is why we originally made this show, because the bottom line is we could put all this research in, and all these experts can tell you whatever they want, but they're just guessing, like we are. Look at Christian McCaffrey. We'll be talking about that in a minute. I mean, there's many things that we can talk about that just kind of, unfortunately, that's the way fantasy football goes. But 1 week or 2 weeks does not make your season, as they say. I know we're going to talk a little bit more about Tua. Obviously, you and Brian might talk a little bit more, obviously a little more in depth about Tua. Just my thoughts on it is I was a little frustrated that obviously he dove head first, but also at the same time, I understand he was frustrated. This offense wasn't doing anything at the time. And at the end of the day, if he goes the other way, then we're sitting here saying, I wouldn't have said it because I understand with his history. But we would question why he didn't try to dive for more yardage and that type of thing. So long story short, and Mike McDaniel said it like best. He's the QB of his family. So that's what, to me, is more. He's such a good dude, and it's just one of those things that you put football aside and want him to do what's best for his health at the end of the day. Sorry, Drew, go ahead.
Yeah, and that's the rhetoric coming out of Miami right now has me thinking a very specific way. So honestly, last offseason, I was saying that I wouldn't blame Tua for retiring at that point based off the concussions he had the season before last year. So now we're here. My feelings haven't changed. And the fact that Mike McDaniels now seems like the rhetoric coming out of there is like we're thinking about his life here. I obviously have no reason to think that the Dolphins would ever tell Tua, like, hey, we're on board with your retirement, because that's obviously, from a business standpoint, a terrible decision. But Mike Daniels seems like the kind of guy that's going to care for these guys' lives. I'm curious to see how this plays out. We still need to know more. You would think Tua knows the slide at this point. I understand that frustration, but I also, like you said, I understand the competitive edge of him too. He wanted to make something happen. I just ultimately feel for the guy here because my personal view is I think he should just retire. It's to that point where I fear for his quality of life down the road at this point, and I don't want to see that happen. I don't want to see a Junior Seau happen. I don't want to see these other guys from like the 70s have the issues that they suffered through. I want to see that stop. So if Tua has to retire to kind of curb that, then I'm all for him doing that.
Yeah, like I had mentioned prior, at the end of the day, it's about him and his family first. And, that's the main thing. Tua's a good guy, and just want to see him have a good life at the end of the day. We've seen what CT does, and it's not a good thing, and something, we need to be concerned about with Tua going forward. Some other key injuries too. Hollywood Brown going on the IR. I know you guys are going to be talking that in a minute, and Christian McCaffrey out again this week. He could be heading to the IR as well, was the rumor mill anyway. All right. Well, speaking of that, who cares what I think? Let's get a medical expert in the building. You guys got your medical tent, so I'm going to step out for a bit and let you guys cover the injuries.
A.J. Dillon just went into the medical tent a moment ago.
Oh,
I feel safer, Brian. 2 police cars just pulled into the parking lot behind me, so I think
you're good. You're fine. Fine.
Look, so I don't know how you feel. This seems so uncharacteristic that on a Friday night and early on a Friday night too. We've got most of this news before 8 o'clock tonight. We're getting some serious tidbits from out of these teams on Christian McCaffrey, on Hollywood Brown. We're gonna get to them here, but it's almost like it's an overcorrection to what the 49ers did last week, and obviously withholding information until the last second when it came to Christian McCaffrey leading to Jordan. Like what we heard, this feels like an overcorrection. I'm going to take it though because we get this information early. We can run with it. We can talk about it. We can plan for it as fantasy managers. So let's start with Christian McCaffrey because he's already ruled out this week. You see, based on what we wrote in the article, you're not surprised by that. They're now saying, though, IR is a possibility. Like, do you think that it's going to have to reach that point, or are we just looking at maybe one more week without him here?
I think for whatever reason, I think 49ers are playing this game, and I don't know why. I feel like this is just throwing more confusion into the mix intentionally, and I don't understand why, because like you said, with the last-minute decision to not play him last week, this one doesn't surprise me after that occurred. And I think they're holding him out until they play the Rams, which is the following week, because that's more of a important game. I think that they're definitely treating a real injury here. I'm not saying that they're fibbing about that, but I question the severity of it. I question the actual injury itself, whether his calf or his Achilles. And I think they're just keeping him as fresh and healthy and ready to go as they need to ride him all the way to the Super Bowl this year. So, Shanahan said today that now all of a sudden they're contemplating IR. But like that doesn't make any sense because what has he done to make it worse that he didn't do a few weeks ago? So that's what really doesn't quite make sense. If it's a chronic issue that he's been treating since the preseason, then it should only be getting better, not necessarily worse. Or at the very least, or the very worst case scenario, it's just not getting better, but it shouldn't be getting worse. So I don't understand where they're going with this or where this is coming from. I think I would be shocked if he goes on IR, but I guess, if you asked me a few weeks ago that he would sit or not week 1, I would have been shocked about that too. So who the heck knows? They're playing some weird games down there in over there in San Francisco. The league hasn't yet looked into anything. They're not investigating the fact that they were very late in submitting their injury list and his non-participation. And, his backup Mason was quoted and unfortunately caught himself in the crosshairs because he was like, oh, I found out Friday that I was playing. And so that kind of threw a little wrinkle into things as well, because it makes you think that the 49ers knew all along that they were going to sit McCaffrey, didn't decide to tell anybody until the last minute, which is kind of suspect. So a lot of weird stuff going out there in San Francisco, but I guess that shouldn't be surprising.
Yeah, I definitely think Jordan Mason probably had a PR class this week at some point. And this does feel like I still think this does feel like the 49ers are just confident they're going to be able to win without Christian McCaffrey at this point early in the season, and they're really trying to save him. They're trying to play it smart so that they don't hit the playoffs without him.
But
another
they had
team
these first 2 weeks penciled in as W's without him, and I think that's what they're doing.
Exactly. Another team though that was really banking on this player, and the Kansas City Chiefs were banking on Hollywood Brown to really take their offense to a new level that, from Chiefs standpoints, the last 2 years has been a little bit stagnant and a little bit lower than what they're used to since they let Tyreek Hill go. So to not have Hollywood Brown, now he's been added to the IR, so he's kind of missed 4 weeks. I saw though, just about an hour ago before we got on the show here, that missing the season is now a possibility for Hollywood Brown, and this seems devastating for the Chiefs. Now, I still think they're going to be fine. We saw what Xavier Worthy can do. They still have Travis Kelce. They still have Rashee Rice. But I do wonder, coming into the season, the team had this plan for this offense, how much of a loss Hollywood Brown could be for them.
This is huge, man. I don't understand. I feel like they wasted 4 weeks with this injury too. Like I feel like this is one of those things where, well, typically with this injury, it's usually pretty apparent very early on whether or not this is going to be something that needs to be fixed surgically or if this is something that can be managed conservatively. So I feel like they should have had their answer right from the get-go here. I don't know why it took so long for them to now decide that they have to go in and fix it. And there's two possibilities here with correction for this surgically. One is that they do a simple closed reduction where they basically reduce the clavicle back onto the sternum and then fixate it somehow, either with a wire or some type of device that goes from external to internal, or this could be more complex where they have to actually open up an incision over the sternoclavicular joint and fix it with some type of hardware, either plates, screws, or possibly some type of heavy-duty suture construct. And if you're looking at that possible scenario, either way, it's probably going to extend past that 4-week IR stint. And if it's the second option, the open reduction and closure and fixation, then that's almost guaranteed season ending.
Yeah, and I don't have their bye week right in front of me. I feel like it was a bit of a later bye week. I want to say around like week 12. This feels like we're probably not going to see him at least until maybe week 8 or week 9. But depending on when that bye week goes, they might throw an extra week in there because of that week or two. So devastating for the Chiefs, I think, but I still think they're going to be all right. Like I said, they still have weapons. But let's get to Tua. We need to talk about Tua because this is it's a narrative that's bigger than just Tua. And it's unfortunate that we have to be here again. But like I said before this, I feel like we're at the point of bye week 6 for the Chiefs. So that's actually not even going to come into factor. It's early enough, so I had that completely wrong.
Well, it's 4 games. No, don't forget, it's 4 games that he's going to be missing. Not 4 weeks. It's 4 games.
Oh, true. So he's missing at least up to week 7. So the earliest he could come back is week 8. Then yes, that makes sense. Okay.
Correct.
But yes, with Tua though. I said it before. I think he just needs to retire. He's obviously, and I don't want this to sound like I'm bashing the guy, but he's obviously not learned from his mistakes on how to play safe for himself. He and I get it. He lets the competitive edge and that mentality take over in times, and unfortunately, he's got this string of luck to where every time he seems to do that, he gets himself in danger, and it happens to be the worst possible scenario every time it happens. Obviously, there's still so much we don't know about CTE and concussions, and it's such a touch-and-go situation, different for everybody. But from a doctor's standpoint, where do you stand on Tua here? Everyone's going to be talking about what he should do, but from a doctor's standpoint, what makes sense here in your mind?
Well, let me preface this by saying that ever since he came into the league, I've done a lot of research on him. He's been part of multiple injury analyses that I've done, even when he was coming in his rookie season. One of my biggest concerns with him was the fact that he was basically a very fragile player. He had a lot of major injuries just in his collegiate years before he even got to the NFL, and then dealt with significant injuries outside of the concussions, even when he made it into the league. Then you start seeing these concussions happen, and they're not mild. Like, these have been significant concussions. He's lost consciousness. He has shown posturing. And these are all signs of significant traumatic brain injury. The problem is when you start adding these together, they start compounding on themselves, and it leads to more traumatic brain injury. And a lot of times there's a fine line where you could cross where some of this injury to the brain can become permanent. And sometimes you don't even always know right off the bat what those symptoms, what those signs are until you fast forward a few years. So, after watching him last night, it's obvious that no matter what he does, whether it be technological advances with equipment, the way he plays the game, even if he was to make drastic changes in both of those departments, there's still a very high chance that he will have another major concussion. And when you start, again, compounding all these concussions, and you're in a guy who's in 20-something years old, that's a recipe for disaster as he ages and lives his normal life long after football. So I am sure that between the physicians he's going to be seeing, between his family members and teammates he's going to be speaking with, and the organization, that having the serious discussion of retirement and having that be a serious consideration is on the table. And it probably was even 2 years ago when he had those 2 concussions back to back in a relatively short period of time. I honestly think he just got lucky last year that he didn't have one. And, we don't even know for sure whether or not he did or didn't. Because don't forget, concussion, you don't always have to be knocked unconscious to have concussions. It could have been much milder. He may not have even come forward with symptoms of it or told anyone. You never know. A lot of guys wear their pride on their sleeve and don't want to sometimes admit to injuries like that. And a concussion can range in severity. And so who knows how many other times he may have a bell rung or anything else similar or that would be a concussion at any other point in his career. So again, it all becomes cumulative. It's a very serious thing. CTE is real. We still don't know a lot about it. We are learning more as the years go by, but it is something he has to seriously consider. And I don't think it's wrong for anybody who cares about him as a player, as a person, to say that. And we're all worried about the player. Nobody wants to see somebody get seriously injured on the field. And unfortunately, the next time if something like this were to happen again, he may not come to. He might be lying on the field, taken off in the stretcher, and never regain consciousness. That's a real possibility if he continues.
Yeah, and I have heard speculation that some people have pointed out that it might have even happened a play or two before, because he had another big hit before the actual play that knocked him out of the game. So you do have to question, was he already a little dazed before that even happened? But we'll never know, and it's besides the point at this point. Speaking of concussions, though, Brian, thank you very much. As always, check out our Inside the Medical Tent each week. We try to get out on Wednesday, sometimes Thursday, over on injuredlistpodcast.com. And we're going to finish up here. We're going to hear from NeuroGuard and then Sophistication Station. So, Brian, thank you and have a fantastic night.
Dr. Michael Hutchison has harnessed the latest in neuromuscular dentistry and impact technology to develop a mouth guard that does more than protect. It enhances. NeuroGuard Plus isn't just a mouth guard. By focusing on the jaw's physiological position, it provides an added layer of neuroprotection, significantly reducing the risk of sports-related neurological injuries. All athletes should be using a custom mouth guard designed to their bite position. NeuroGuard Plus was created as a means to maintain your physiological jaw position regardless of your bite. The appliance is designed to optimize your upper-lower jaw relationship to improve your strength, your balance, your oxygen intake, and drastically lower your chance of a concussion. Independent studies have shown that the NeuroGuard Plus will provide you with improvement to both upper and lower body strength. The same improvements were not present with a common mouth guard. Over 6,500 athletes have used the NeuroGuard Plus. Dr. Hutchison is happy to say that the amount of diagnosed concussions is 0.2%. The NeuroGuard Plus offers athletes, coaches, and parents an advantage to keep their players safe on the field. If you or your child actively participates in athletics, they need to be protected from the dangers of repetitive head trauma. Get your NeuroGuard Plus mouthguard today. Click on the link and use code ILPSports for 10% discount on your purchase.
Well, we certainly see the importance of mouthpiece, so go visit NeuroGuard Plus today. All right, well, you know what time it is. It's Friday night, and we got to get a little sophisticated tonight. Our boy Andrew LeDuc, Mr. Mallard, brings you Sophistication Station.
Oh la la! Welcome to another stop at Sophistication Station. I'm Andrew LeDuc, aka Mr. Mallard, and let's get some classy starts for your flex plays or DFS plays. Some guys who might stand out that most people might not be thinking about this week. So let's start off in Jacksonville. Brian Thomas Jr., the young wide receiver down in Jacksonville, who I believe is going to soon be Trevor Lawrence's favorite target and the number one receiver in that offense. Got in the end zone last week with some low yardage, but 4 receptions on 4 targets. I like the outlook moving forward, especially against that Browns defense. I think Brian Thomas could have a big week this week. And then another receiver over in Washington, Terry McLaurin. Let's look for Scary Terry to get back on track for the season, for the big season that I think he's going to have. Against that Giants defense, Jaden Daniels should pop, and Terry McLaurin should be the recipient of a lot of that effort from Daniels. And let's round it out with our running back as well, Zach Charbonnet going up against the Patriots. With Kenneth Walker being questionable, we'll see if he plays, but even if he does play, I think he's going to be a little limited. But this is a good matchup for either running back up against the Patriots' interior line, which is their weakest part of that defense. So I like Zach Charbonnet as a bit of a sleeper this week, depending on what Walker does. But Zach Charbonnet should be cheap in DFS lines, and he could be a good flex play for you. So stay tuned for more classy starts each and every week here on Sophistication Station, and hey, enjoy the rest of the show, guys.
If he were to punch you in the face, you would have to fight off the strong urge to thank him.
Sophisticated starts for your fantasy lineup. All right, well, it's Friday night. Time to, you know what time it is.
Breakdown.
Bring it on down!
Breakdown.
Bring it on down! Bring it on down!
Breaking it on down. At least Fred's not at Beetlejuice tonight. I don't know where he is. But he's poke fun of him. All right, let's start off with 49ers at the Vikings. 49ers last week end up being 20th against QBs, 15th versus running backs, 23rd against receivers, and 5th against tight ends. The Vikings, now this is a reflection of their opponent. They were number 1 against QBs. They were 5th against running backs, 16th against receivers, and 10th against tight ends. What do you think in the matchup? Give me some guys that you like and maybe don't like in this one.
You cut off real fast. Sorry. Which matchup were we talking about again? I missed the beginning.
49ers at the Vikings.
That's what I thought. Okay. Yeah, so this – I still don't trust Sam Darnold in the Vikings offense. I know Justin Jefferson still got in the end zone. He was still very serviceable for fantasy managers, so I understand that. Fucking Manchester, New Hampshire, I swear to God. But San Francisco's still the play here. Anybody in that offense, but George Kittle, I think, is going to have a big game. Deebo Samuel, they're going to use him, as we saw without Christian McCaffrey, out of the backfield as a wide receiver. So big fans of the Deebo Samuel play as well. And we already saw, like we said, Christian McCaffrey already ruled out. Jordan Mason should be perfectly fine again this week. Just throw in as your RB2 if needed. So do that with confidence. Unfortunately, from the Viking standpoint, like I said, I don't think there's still much there right now. You still play Justin Jefferson. You have to. But outside of that, everything else is just a little too, I guess, risky, you can say. So 49ers should have a fairly easy win here, I think. So it's pretty straightforward, this matchup for me.
Yeah, I think Justin Jefferson play is okay because you're going to see, I would assume, Sam Darnold throw the ball to try to get them back in it later in this ball game. So some good garbage time points probably for Jefferson. As you said, you start all your Niners. I mean, I don't think there's anything. Brock Purdy this week for me, kind of like a mid-tier QB because this game could end up kind of like the Thursday night game where you see them get up early and it just goes back to the running game. So that's pretty much that matchup. Not really much to talk about there. And, let's talk about this one. Seahawks at your Patriots. Seahawks were 12th last week against QBs, 4th against running backs, 17th against receivers, and 8th against tight ends. Patriots 6th against QBs, 13th against running backs, 6th against receivers, and 16th against tight ends. Guys you like and don't like in this one.
Yeah, so this is interesting because we also now know Kenneth Walker. He's not ruled out yet, but he's now been downgraded to doubtful. So I said it in Sophistication Station. I was high on Zach Charbonnet. Anyways, I'm even higher now with that news coming out tonight. So I think Zach Charbonnet is going to have himself a day against this Patriots defense for the same reasons I said. The interior of that line is their weak spot. The secondary is arguably top 5, one of the best in the league. You got to give them that. We'll see what happens. I also don't give a ton of credence to week 1 rankings because especially this week, we saw last week for the season, a lot of funky stuff kind of happened. So I'm not going to go too crazy about where teams rank at certain positions yet. So given that, I think Ramondre Stevenson also has a perfectly fine day today, running back 2 kind of day. So I'm fine firing Ramondre Stevenson. From the Patriots standpoint, though, Brissett, still not comfortable. None of the receivers, I'm still not comfortable. I would have said I'm comfortable with Hunter Henry. I'm still going to give him a shot as like a secondary tight end, like if you can do it in the flex and have to, like I'm okay with that. But I was a little surprised they didn't use him more last week. So from the Seattle standpoint, DK Metcalf, I expect him to do more than he did last week. That's really Zach Charbonnet for me in this game is the biggest play you can do.
Yeah, I mean, the Patriots defense was good last week. However, that might have been a little bit of this Bengals offense being a bit of disarray. So again, I definitely like DK here. I like Geno Smith to be kind of in the same area as Brock Purdy as well, just kind of a mid-tier QB. I like your Hunter Henry possible play here as well because, again, going back to it, I kind of feel like Patriots might actually have to kind of throw and get into this one because I think the Seahawks might be able to be good enough to get up on them at least by 2 scores or so and make them kind of try to get back in this ballgame. But we'll see, if it becomes a back-and-forth defense. I like Zach Charbonnet as well. Kenneth Walker really had a lot of juice to him when he was out there, so they're definitely eating the running back in this offense. And if you got, the main guy with pretty much nobody behind him at this point, I like Zach Charbonnet a lot. All right, let's go to the matchup. Talking about the Giants at the Commanders. The Giants against fantasy QBs last week were 18th. Against running backs, they're 23rd. Receivers, 20th and 19th against tight ends. Commanders, 31st against QBs, 21st against running backs, 31st against receivers, and 4th against tight ends. All right, guys you like and don't like in this one.
Look, if you're starting a Giants player this week, you already lost. This is so on paper. This game looks a lot worse than I think it actually is because I actually think there's some good value here for the Commanders. I think the Commanders have shown some flashes that Jaden Daniels can do something with this offense. Yes, it still needs some work. It's going to take some time, but I feel like this week could be one of those weeks to where we get a glimpse of it. I love the Jaden Daniels to Terry McLaurin matchup this week. It's why they are a big part, as you'll see, of my DFS lineup this week. So Jaden Daniels, I think, can pop off. Terry McLaurin, I think, will be right there as well. And then Brian Robinson has shown himself to be fully capable. We saw less than Austin Eckler than I thought we would. But I'm all right with that. So Brian Robinson, Terry McLaurin, Jaden Daniels, fire them up confidently this week. And if you're playing DFS, fire them up for sure because I think they're going to be low owned.
I feel like in this one, you could even throw in Eckler as a flex maybe option because of how horrible the Giants' defense is and how horrible the Giants are overall. But I could see there's always that bounce back game, and Daniel Jones going against this horrible defense, although that could be a product of Baker Mayfield being good. Which
he's better than people think.
Exactly. So it could be one of the two. It could be possible, though. You could see a little bit of a Daniel Jones resurgence, and possibly with that, Malik Neighbors, for me at least, is a number 2 receiver this week. Because what else do the Giants have, quite frankly?
It's true.
Devin Singletary, maybe in your flex, maybe. But, I wouldn't be excited to put him there. All right, let's go Chargers at Panthers. It's just epic matchup after epic matchup. Chargers, they're 11th against QBs, 14th against running backs, 15th against receivers, 30th against tight ends. Panthers 27th against fantasy QBs, 31st against running backs, 7th against receivers, and 31st against tight ends. What say you guys you like and don't like?
These are all the 1 o'clock games. I'm assuming we're going by timing. So,
yes,
geez, this 1 o'clock slate's rough. This is pretty brutal. Once again, I don't really feel confident starting anyone on the Panthers at this point. I got to see somebody do something. The Chargers, the Chargers. I mean, you got to start Justin Herbert if you have him. This game, honestly, I'm not touching this game period anywhere because I don't think the Chargers. This is gonna be a game. I don't think the Chargers are gonna have to do too much. I think it's gonna be a slow game. Low score. I just don't think there's going to be a push to do too much. So I think this game is going to underwhelm as a whole. So I'm really not touching this game.
I like J.K. Dobbins, obviously, because that Panthers front line looked
it's fair, yeah.
Quite frankly. So I can't even, almost makes me sick to say it. But J.K. Dobbins this week anyway, he's definitely a good play. I don't think you can't get around that. And the Chargers, not for nothing, I have to say that he actually came out and they've been running the football. So, we'll see how this offense, goes, how it goes going forward. But I think no doubt play is J.K. Dobbins overall in the matchup. I agree with you. Very nervous about starting any Panthers right now till they, like you said, show something. But a good DST play, if you need a stream, is definitely the Chargers.
For sure.
Saints at Cowboys. So this might be a little bit of an interesting one here. Saints last week, seventh against QBs, number 1 against running backs, 13th against receivers, number 2 against tight ends. The Cowboys were 10th against QBs, 19th against running backs, 10th against receivers, and 29th against tight ends. Njoku out for this one as well. So what do you think? Any guys you like? I'm sorry, I'm looking at at something else. Sorry, I'm thinking of last week. I'm thinking of last week of the Browns playing the Cowboys. Sorry.
I was gonna say Njoku.
Give me guys you like and don't like.
So first of all, this is a game that I think I think last time I looked at the spread, it was maybe like 4.5 in favor of the Cowboys here. I'm not sleeping on the Saints to stay in this game and to cover that and keep it closer because I think that we could see a bit of a complacency from the Cowboys here, with given the signings of Prescott and CeeDee Lamb, that they just feel comfortable and maybe they sleep a little bit. But given that, you got to start Prescott, you got to start Lamb. I'm still not on board on starting Elliott yet. We'll see what happens there, and then the rest of that running back room is. We'll see who steps up. Jake Ferguson is another injury you need to watch out for. If he does play and everything seems fine, I'm going to play him at tight end because I think there's enough potential there. But from the Saints side, Alvin Kamara has been my guy all off season. He did enough for me to not be off of him in week 1. I think he does more this week as well. Chris Olave still is also a start. I still think what's his name? Rashid Shaheed is a boom or bust guy. He boomed last week. I can't trust him to start him every week at this point. I get why you want to start him after week 1, but there's definitely guys out there I would prefer to start him around the same range as him, like a Chris Godwin or something like that I would much rather. Even Terry McLaurin, I think, is right now in the same ranking range as Rashid Shaheed. Much rather start McLaurin and Godwin over Shaheed.
Yeah, I agree. I agree with you there. It's like that. I had a conversation with my son about chasing kickers because you're just chasing points, and it's the same way I think with Shaheed. And there's a few guys like that. One thing I will say though, when he does hit, he hits real hard. Quite frankly, and we'll see how this matchup plays out. But he might find him sneaking up the sideline or going up down the middle. Where he makes his money. So we'll see. Wait and see on Rashid. I'm definitely not starting any of that Cowboys running backfield, Rico Dowdle or Zeke. Obviously, CD is a top guy this week. Dak, I think, is good. I think the Saints CD is good, but it's better at home. And now that they're going to Dallas, I don't have a ton of confidence this week in them. Obviously, the Cowboys did work against one of the top defenses in the league last week. So I think they're all a good play this week. And I think just the Saints offense in general is kind of hit or miss. It's kind of the way Derek Carr plays. You feel like he's good some weeks, and some weeks he's not. So I think, unfortunately, this might be the week he's not. Colts at Packers. This is a little interesting one with the Colts QB against QBs last week. They were 26th. Against running backs, they were 26th. At least they're consistent. Against receivers, they're 29th. Against tight ends, they're 15th. Packers, 23rd against QBs. Dead last against running backs. 22nd against receivers and 22nd against tight ends. Guys you like and don't like.
Yeah, so I like Josh Jacobs and I like Jonathan Taylor here. As far as the Colts go, I'm still got to start Michael Pittman here, but I am severely worried about Michael Pittman going forward for the season. But it's only week 2. You got to start him here. Green Bay, this is tough. Without Jordan Love here, with Malik Willis back there, it's so hard. I know what we saw on Jaden Reed. Absolutely explosive. He's a stud. God, I just don't think that offense is set up to withstand Willis in the backfield throwing the ball. I don't think we see that same level of explosive out of him. I can't confidently start any of those Green Bay receivers until I get a look at what this looks like this week. I just think there's better options, even though Jayden Reed had a massive week last week. But Josh Jacobs, in my opinion, looked fairly well. I know he caught some flack, but I thought he actually looked good. So I like Jacobs in this offense going forward. They're going to need him. So I'm riding Jacobs and I'm riding Jonathan Taylor. Those are my two, main guys from both sides.
I like it. I like it a lot. I think you pretty much nailed it. The cherry on top in this matchup is the running game. That's where you want to pick from. You're going to start Anthony Richardson's obviously as well.
Sure.
Prove his worth as a QB. Michael Pittman, like you said, I think he's more in the flex range right now. As much confidence that we had going into the season right now, it's just not there yet. Anthony Richardson doing a lot on the ground and finding different people basically to throw to. But on the other side, like you said, not a lot of confidence at all in the passing game for the Packers. But Jayden Reed, I think, is the play if you're going to go there, because the fact is they're going to hand him the ball. They're going to do different things to get him the football to make plays. So, and then I'm not real confident. All right, let's go to the Browns at the Jaguars, where Njoku is out this game. QB against fantasy QBs, they were 15th. The Browns against running backs, they were 16th, 24th against receivers, and 11th against tight ends. The Jags were 25th against QBs, 27th against running backs, 28th against receivers, and 9th against tight ends. So guys you like and don't like in this one.
Yeah, so I know Jerome Ford got most of his points in garbage time last week, but I still like Jerome Ford in this Browns offense as the running back that I'd rather own him and play. Deshaun Watson scares the hell out of me. I saw a little bit of that game on TV last week, and what I saw was pretty awful. Like, he wasn't just missing guys, he was missing guys. And now you get the whole, sidebar, other stuff coming into play here. It makes me very worried about Amari Cooper. I don't think I can. I think he's still probably a wide receiver 2, but I can't confidently start him as my wide receiver 1 at this point. But once again, he's just a guy that if you have him, you're probably going to have to play him. On the other side, though, I talked about it before for the Jaguars, Brian Thomas. Brian Thomas is going to be a guy this year that could potentially, very early to say this, could potentially be a league winner, someone you could get late in the drafts, someone who is showing up already, and he's going to do nothing but keep showing up. I think he's going to outperform Chris Kirk as we go on here. Trevor Lawrence needs that. The team also said, don't worry about ETN. He's going to get his, so I'm confident ETN is still going to get his carries. I know it was 50-50 with Tank Bigsby last week, but ETN should still be the guy that I'm going to start here. But I am holding Bigsby for as long as I can if I'm an ETN owner, because at some point it could switch. But for now, ETN, you should still start with confidence.
Yeah, being at that game last week, it definitely, Bigsby looked like the better running back, period, in that matchup. Not sure what went on there. Plus, ETN had that fumble as well, so maybe it was a little bit of a confidence thing. Not sure what it was, but he looked like the better guy. So hopefully that is the case, that they lean a little more on ETN, and we're not going to see this this half and half backfield, which frustrates fantasy managers. I like the Brian Thomas. I think Christian Kirk's going to step up a little bit in this one. I think we're going to see a little bit of fantasy points on both sides. I think the Jags really are going to feel they're both 0-1. They're both going to feel desperate. So I think we're going to see two teams really trying to slug this one out. Deshaun Watson obviously has a lot to prove as well. So I think we're going to see, I won't say a fantasy bonanza, but I think we're going to see some good points. Jets at Titans. The Jets are 8th against fantasy QBs, 25th against running backs, 21st against receivers, and 18th against tight ends. Titans had a good week statistically. They were 4th against QBs, 2nd against running backs, 11th against receivers, and 6th against tight ends. Let's say you, my friend, guys you like and don't like.
Yeah, I think the Titans defense can be perfectly fine. Especially given what we saw out of the Jets last week. I do think that was probably just a 1-week blunder. I don't know what that music was. I think it was a 1-week blunder. So I think the Jets get back on track this week. There's too much talent on that offense for them not to get on track. So I'm not worried too much about that. But as far as Tennessee goes, Tony Pollard, I'll start Tony Pollard. I'll start Chig at tight end. I'm fine with that. Everything else is a question mark other than the defense. But yeah, fire up Garrett Wilson, fire up Aaron Rodgers, fire up Brees Hall. Those are easies. Don't get sold too much on Allen Lazard. I think a lot of what we saw with that Jets team last week was because of the way the game ended up going. Aaron Rodgers fell into some comfortable places he needed to make some progress in that game. And Allen Lazard is that comfortable place for him. So I expect Garrett Wilson to come out and have a big game this week.
So I'm going to a little bit of disagree and say that I think the Titans secondary, and I've been saying it, is definitely for real. So I don't think, Aaron, this is going to be the game we're going to have that Aaron Rodgers, oh, he's back moment. I do think the Jets may, end up prevailing overall, but I think it's because of Brees Hall. He's going to be the big difference maker, I think, in this matchup. Obviously, I think the Titans will try to ground and pound with Tony because he seemed to get the majority of the carries, no matter what they said about Tajay Spears. Tony Pollard seems to be the guy. So for volume play, he's good, but against his Jets D, he may struggle a bit. But I think he'll see enough carries that he'll at least get you some good, decent, at least fantasy points as well. So I'm not sold on the Jets receiving core on this particular matchup or Aaron Rodgers, but I do like Brees Hall on that side. And I'm very nervous on any Titan, this week. So there'd be more flex plays for me. Jets D is for real, as I mentioned. Titans D is for real. Again, I think it's going to be more of a defensive matchup. All right, we're going to take a quick little break before we finish up the rest. I hope you got your special suit on because we're going to head to court. It's Judge Jordan's Fantasy Court.
My opinion's the only one that counts.
You may be seated. Today, we would like to call to the stand Mr. Deshaun Watson, quarterback of the Cleveland Browns. Mr. Watson, you are brought before this court today and tried for the crimes of sexual assault, which you are no stranger to, obviously, but this case stems from the absolute boning you were given both the Cleveland Browns organization and the entire city of Cleveland, Ohio as a whole. Cleveland believed in your ability to lead and quarterback the team, and after all, why shouldn't they? You were an elite quarterback in Houston. However, since signing that 5-year, $230 million contract and being traded to Cleveland, the performance has just not lived up to the expectations. Week 1 was no different against the Dallas Cowboys. Looks like you went 24 of 45 on the day for 169 yards. I see what you did there. You threw 1 touchdown, threw 2 interceptions, almost a third, actually, on your way to losing yet another game for the hapless Cleveland Browns. And the Cleveland Browns have been searching for a quarterback since before I was born, it seems, and it looks like they still have not found their happy ending in you, sir. Ultimately, this court does find you guilty on all charges and sentences you to another mediocre season where you are likely to find yourself off the roster and not being a starting quarterback next season if you don't turn around things quickly. This court is adjourned.
You're playing dumb, or it's not an act.
Forgot to say all right. Screw that all up. All right. Let's go with some good matchups now. Bucks at the Lions. And the Bucks last week, 30 against QBs, 24th against running backs. They were number 1 against receivers. That was because Jaden Daniels was running all over them. 14th against tight ends. QBs for the Lions, they were 19th, 7th against running backs. Third, dead last against receivers, the Koopa to Cup show, and 20th against tight ends. So what say you? Guys you like and don't like?
Everybody. This game, I think, is going to be where the points are at. I love this game. I want to watch every second of it. Look, Chris Godwin is still my guy right now. Like, I think he's back where he belongs in the slot. I know everyone's saying it. I'm not new saying that, but you can just tell it just makes sense in this offense. Mike Evans can do what he wants to do. Chris Godwin can do what he wants to do. And then Rachaad White coming out of the backfield. So it's actually not a great matchup for Rachaad White. I will say that. But I don't think that matters. I think it's gonna be a lot of passing in this game from both sides because now that Jameson Williams seems to be finally showing up to be able to forget suspension, forget injuries. He's healthy. He's behaving. I think this offense now with Amon-Ra and then Jameson flanking it, and then you got both Gibbs and Montgomery. Points galore in this game this week. Start them all. It's okay. If you have anybody on these teams, start them.
Yeah, I think White's okay in this matchup, as you mentioned, because he'll definitely get some dump-off passes at the end of the day. So
sure.
It may be tough going as far as carries go, but I certainly see him getting a few. I don't see Baker Mayfield now being the number 2 QB next week, like last week, mind you. But I definitely think he's a possible top 15, top 10 guy this week in a game that may end up being a big shootout. So it should be fun to watch. All right, I hate to bring the volume down here, but let's go Raiders at Ravens. Raiders 9th against QBs, 22nd against running back, 14th against receivers, 17th against tight ends. The Ravens 21st against QBs, that was Pat Mahomes. 9th against running backs, 26th against receivers, 28th against tight ends. Guys who like and don't like in this one.
So this game is huge because we still need to see what the hell is going on with Mark Andrews at this point. I think it's going to return. Mark Andrews was double teamed most of that game. That's why they weren't going to him. It wasn't because they prefer Isaiah Likely over Andrews. Let's be real. They were just smart from a football standpoint to where they went with what was given to them. So Mark Andrews is fine. I think he's a top 5 tight end this week. Fire up everybody else as well, as far as Zay Flowers and Lamar. And then from the other side, I'm getting distracted. Sorry, who are they playing again?
the Raiders.
Thank you. Yes, the Raiders. Yeah, Devontae Adams. You got to start him. I'm still not. He was one of my I won't say bust, but guy I was lower on compared to what his hype was coming into the season, because he's got Gardner Minshew throwing him the ball. It's going to be a boom or bust season for Devontae Adams. I don't think this is a week of a boom. So you got to start him, unfortunately, but I'm not starting him confidently this week. And then Gardner Minshew is what he is. If you start 2 QBs, you can probably get away with him, but I'm not in love with it. Brock Bowers is the guy here that I am still very curious to see how he fully fits into this offense and what he can do for this offense.
I think he's a good start this week, only because I think the Ravens showed they couldn't even stand to guard Noah Gray. I'm going to mute that since somebody's loud over there. Noah Gray, not Travis Kelce last week, ended up showing up for the Raiders. So I think the Ravens might be a little weak in that tight end position. So that's the only Raider I'd start with confidence. I love to see Derrick Henry, them feed him a little more this week. So that's what I think we're going to see a little bit more of. I think Lamar will have a good game. He's still a top 10 guy because he gets it on the ground for you. But I think it's a big Derrick Henry game. So I'd like to see him bounce back this week. So if you got Derrick Henry, obviously starting him anyway, but I think you can feel really good about starting him this week. All right, let's go to the next one, the Rams at the Cardinals. Now this one's like the other, just basically a fantasy bonanza to me. I like everything. There's nothing I don't like in this matchup. The Rams against fantasy QBs were 15th, 30th against running backs, 19th against receivers, and 23rd against tight ends. The Cardinals were dead last against QBs with Josh Allen going crazy. Running backs were 8th. They were 25th against receivers and 12th against tight ends. Guys you like and don't like in this one.
Yeah, so I like James Conner. I actually, I like Kyler Murray, but I actually like Marvin Harrison. He's a guy that I thought was overhyped as a rookie wide receiver. It just doesn't usually work out well. But I think given the lack of usage in week 1, I feel like the Cardinals are going to make a point to use him a little more this week to really show him off. So I like him in this matchup as well. As far as the other side, man, I hate rooting against guys, but I was so against when Kyren Williams all off season, and then especially once we got the news that he was going to be returning punts, I went all in on saying that forget about him. I moved him way down my rankings. It didn't work out week 1 for me. But if you own Kyren Williams, you confidently have to start him until we see anything different. Because I went against myself. I came into the season saying Blake Corum isn't going to translate well into an NFL quarterback. Then I got one piece of news and I threw that all away, and mistakes happen. Stafford to Kupp is it feels like at least for now, gonna go back to old school. We obviously know Puka's not playing for at least 4 games, probably more though. Right now, for week 2 standpoints, Kupp is going to be a top wide receiver that you got to play. I don't think he's going to be long term this season, but right now in week 2, start him.
All right. So we got a question. Well, let me just say, going into that matchup real quick, I like to see a bounce back from, like you said, Marvin Harrison Jr. We both actually, I think when we were on the Sunday show, someone asked, I don't think you're on the Sunday show. Anyway, someone asked about starting him over like Mike Evans and someone else. And luckily we said the right thing and to bench him. So they listen. Because it's just an unknown. But I think this is going to be one of those matchups that you're going to be safe for this one, because I think you're going to see obviously a lot of Cooper Kupp and a lot of this Rams offense. And I think you'll see a lot of they'll try to get to the run game in this matchup. And I will just say a middle finger to Sean McVay, because like you mentioned, the Blake Corum thing, I'm in my dynasty league and I basically have no running backs. It's just awful. So I was like, so in the draft, I drafted Blake Corum and I was like, all right, man, hopefully week one, you just get me something. I mean, and it's nothing.
Nothing at all. Exactly what I knew in my heart was going to happen to.
So long story short, not to get too involved in this one, because the bottom line is I like pretty much anyone in this matchup I like, because I think you'll see a lot of points being scored in this one. So fire them up on this particular matchup. All right, let's go to a couple questions we got. Looks like I'm assuming that's Mark. He wants to know if he should trade Jaden Reed for Hockenson. He's got Justin Jefferson and Chase and Deebo. Damn. So he doesn't need a receiver, but he does need a tight end. What do you think, Andrew?
All right, so Jaden Reed for Hawks. So here's the thing with Hawk, though. I still don't know when Hawk's going to play. That's the tough part here. Like, I know Jaden Reed is going to be a shell of him, what we now know he can do without Jordan Love. But the prognosis on Jordan Love isn't terrible. And we still do not know what the prognosis and the timeline is going to be on Hawk. So I'm keeping Jaden Reed here. You can find another tight end. It's fine. I think by the time Hawk really comes back and even gets up into speed, Jordan Love's probably back as well, and Jaden Reed is going to be much more valuable than Hawk here.
Yeah, actually, I agree. I think it's just like a hold, if you will. This isn't a that's crazy. It's not a crazy thought, because Hawkinson's definitely top 10 tight end when he's in. But like I said, there's so much unknown right now. Unfortunately, though, the longer the unknown goes, then the values start to change. So I understand wanting to do it now. But I would wait and hold. Like Andrew mentioned, there's guys you can stream right now that can get you those points. I know you mentioned Gesicki last week. Definitely stream him again. With that was someone else we were talking about with T. Higgins not going again. I know it's kind of crazy to say. Jawan Johnson's a decent stream. So there's some guys you can pick up and make your way through. Shop Jaden Reed around and see who else might be willing to trade if you're wanting to make a trade for a good tight end. But I would just kind of hold and wait and see on the Hockenson deal. Captain Joking, huge fan of the show. Thank you, bro. Appreciate it. Mark, by the way, appreciate you for sending the question. He already got a sub. All right. I appreciate you. Quick question. Am I a buffoon for wanting to start over Adams or Neighbors? What do you think, Drew?
No. I mean, the Adams one is the close one because it's Davante Adams. We know what Davante Adams is. We've seen him do it with not stud quarterbacks. But right now, considering what we saw at Worthy, considering how we saw that Chiefs offense operate with him, and considering now knowing that Hollywood Brown is going to be out long term, I don't see the Chiefs wanting to necessarily slow down with Worthy. I think they're going to want to ride it. So in the here and now, I think it's all right to start Worthy over both of those guys. Definitely Neighbors, because that Giants offense is a mess.
Yeah, I would agree. Definitely don't think you're a buffoon for wanting to. And it's a good play now with Hollywood for sure being out. So, obviously Rice is going to get a lot in the offense. Kelsey obviously will be okay. He's going to get his too. But Xavier Worthy brings a X factor, if you will, and can make some huge plays for you, big boom guy, if you will. So not a crazy thought at all. And definitely I agree over Neighbors. I don't know how I could do it over Adams. That'd really be, but Neighbors, I could definitely see that for sure. Captain Joking, appreciate your comment, my friend. And okay, thank you, Mark. Appreciate you guys for doing some questions for us. We appreciate it. We're going to get back. We had a couple more games, and then we got a Chuck Bass, DJ Chuck Bass back to end the show. We got Bengals at Chiefs. Bengals last week, 5th against QBs, 18th against running backs, 2nd against receivers, 21st against tight ends. Chiefs, 28th against QBs, 17th against running backs, 9th against receivers, and they were dead last against tight ends. So what do you say, my friend? Guys you like and don't like?
Once again, you went out. I am so sorry. Chiefs. Is this the Chiefs game? That's what I thought. Okay. I just want to make sure. Yeah. So, So I think the Bengals bounce back. The Bengals were exactly what we see them every year in Week 1. And I think they bounce back now. Do I think they bounce back to the way that they should be the ceilings of Joe Burrow, the ceilings of Jamar Chase? No. But I think they're better than last week. I don't think we're going to see single-digit performances. So I'm fine starting Chase, and I'm fine starting Burrow. Yes, Gesicki is a nice streamer again. I had to delete the tweet because I celebrated immediately when I saw him score that touchdown. I said, I told you all, it worked out. And then I got called back. I had to delete the tweet. But a perfectly fine streaming tight end given the tight end landscape again. I still like Chase Brown going forward, but against this Chiefs defense, not necessarily. So I think they're just going to be throwing it. They're going to try to get their weapons going, and that's Jamar Chase at this point. From the Chiefs side, we saw too little of Kelsey to see too little of him again this week. I think Kelsey is going to be a feature in this offense. I obviously just said Xavier Worthy is also going to continue to be a feature in this offense this week. So fire them both up. You got to fire up Pacheco as well. Pacheco's a legitimate stud running back. We saw Stevenson do what he wanted last week for the Patriots against the Bengals. So Isaiah Pacheco has an even wider range than Stevenson. So start everyone from Mahomes to Rice. I'm fine starting all of them.
Listen, if the 1 o'clock bored you, the 4 o'clock's going to wake your butt up because there's a
lot
of offensive games happening. Not this next one, though. The Steelers at the Broncos. Justin Fields gets the start in this one again. Steelers last week, number 2 against QBs, 10th against running backs, 3rd against receivers, 27th against tight ends. Broncos, 24th against QBs, 28th against running backs, 12th against receivers, and 7th against tight ends. Before I ask you, I did want to just mention I didn't say anything, but I like the Bengals and I like Joe Burrow and this offense to bounce back this week, kind of a get right thing for them, which will mean good things on the other side because they're going to be scoring too. So I think it's a high scoring game in that one. All right, sorry.
Burrow's 3-1 against Mahomes in his career so far, so it's not a bad take.
True enough. Steelers at Bronco. Who are you liking this, or guys you like and don't like?
I admittedly told a guy just the other day to drop Justin Fields to pick up Baker Mayfield because that was a single quarterback league, and I felt fine doing that because I'm not surprised that Fields. I know Wilson's hurt, but I'm also just not surprised that Fields would have been the starter anyways over him. Fields is still Fields. I can't. I don't like anyone on the Steelers. I don't. Even George Pickens. I just think he's capped. Once again, for this week, George Pickens can be fine because the Broncos also very much suck. But they are playing in Denver, and that's weird things happen in Denver. Bo Nix looked horrendous last week. I think the Steelers defense is plenty good enough to where Bo Nix is going to look horrendous again. So I think the Steelers win this game. But Javonte Williams, I can't confidently start him after last weekend with this matchup this week. Cortland, though, I was surprised. Cortland saw the targets, but the production wasn't necessarily fully there, and I think it's going to be there this week. So George Pickens, I guess, if I have to.
Almost in a Malik Neighbors situation where it's it's can you get him the football? He's targeted a lot downfield as well. So we'll see if that's the game script this week. However, I like Javonte maybe in a flex position, and you definitely gonna fire up that Steelers defense. Justin Fields, let's put him I put him in a mid-tier again because he gives you that running aspect. So if he starts to cook a little bit, Justin Fields could have a huge fantasy day against a Broncos defense that is not very good. So he's that guy that if you got somebody, that you're just kind of, not too sure about, I think you could put him in there and have a decent fantasy day. All right, let's hit Sunday Night Football. Bears against the Texans. Bears 3 against QBs, 20th against running backs, 4th against receivers, 26th against tight ends. Texans are 29th against QBs, 3rd against running backs, 27th against receivers, and number 1 against tight ends. Who you like in the Sunday Night Delight?
All the Texans. I love this Texans team. I think what we saw out of Caleb Williams is what we can expect to see at least for a little while here. I think he's going to turn out all right, but this is still just week 2 in his NFL career, and he's going up against another very good team in the Texans, a team that a lot of people are saying have a chance to knock off the Chiefs this year in the AFC. So that can't be joked about. That Bears defense is also not going to replicate what they did last week. So I think the Texans run away with this. I think Caleb Williams is obviously going to have to throw a bunch, in the second half of this game. They're going to be behind. But I just don't think there's going to be enough to warrant really any of the Bears. They also don't have the running game to really warrant this. Roschon Johnson is just kind of disappointing far in his young career, and Khalil Herbert is what he is, and it's just I'm not there for the Bears, but I'm there for all the Texans. Just sign them all up. Diggs and Collins and Tank Dell. There's too many weapons. All of them. You can start.
So we had a conversation about this, I think either last Friday with Justin. Yes, I'm starting them, but they just make me nervous because it's like you're going to get – I have Tank Dell, for example, in one league, and I was so excited to finally get him in my lineup, and then I got a dud. It's one of those things.
It's likely dud.
It's just one of those things where, one of the weeks are going to eat, and the other weeks you're going to eat mud. So I'm starting them, but, again, this Bears D is pretty good too. So I'm not very confident, to be honest with you, about putting them in. Mostly all of them would be flex plays for me because of you're basically going off a luck pretty much. So whoever's going to be the guy that week. Bears, though, I believe it or not, I'm just going to say this name because it was all preseason and all even in camp. I like DeAndre Swift to get at least a couple of dump off passes and do something big with it in this matchup. So I think you're going to get at least a little bit of Swift in here. Obviously, with Adunze still banged up and Keenan Allen banged up, they're going to be looking for playmakers in this offense. DJ Moore obviously could be having a good game as well. And first time for Caleb Williams to be under the lights in prime time. So sometimes that affects players differently. It could be a good thing. We could find out. So anyway, long story short, not a lot of Bears I'm confident in. I'm not so confident in the receiving core only because there's so much. I love Joe Mixon in this matchup, and I'm definitely firing up CJ Stroud. All right, Monday night, finish it off. Falcons at Eagles. Falcons 16th against QBs, 6th against running backs, 5th against receivers, and 24th against tight ends. Eagles 22nd against QBs, 11th against running backs, 30th against receivers, and 13th against tight ends. Guys you like and don't like on a Monday night.
This is going to be another game that I think there'll be some fantasy points to be had. I like Bijan, obviously. I like Drake London to actually show up this week. I think he's a smart enough quarterback to know where his weapons are, and he's not going to let them go silent for too long. So I like Drake. I like Kirk. It's with me. On the Eagles side, I just saw this. So apparently AJ Brown has been added to the. I slipped it as we get on the show, so I haven't seen the details yet. But AJ Brown has now shown up on the injury report, so it's something to watch. We got to check in on that before Sunday morning. So depending on what that means, what it looks like, watch that. But even so, Devontae Smith looked pretty fine enough in week 1. And I obviously Saquon Barkley. It's no-brainer. Hurts, no-brainer. It's an easy one. Dallas Goedert is a guy that I'm high on at tight end because I just think, even with all the other weapons, I think this offense functions best when they do just keep the tight end involved because I just think they need that in order to open up the other areas of the offense the way they want to use it.
Do us a solid. Wake up with us Sunday morning at 8 a.m. because Brian's going to have a nice injury update for you. So maybe we can check in on A.J. Brown as well for you guys. Now, to close the show out, before we get there, though, however, I just want to say someone in this, Bijan's going to have a little bit of a tougher matchup I think Andrew went out because his phone, he even texted me, said his phone's about to die. Bijan's going to face a pretty big struggle here against this Eagles defense. I like what Drew said about the Drake London. Kyle Pitts could be somebody that could see a little more action. I don't know if you saw his touchdown, but it kind of signifies his career where he's like, hey, I'm open. And, it took him a second to even find him. And he throws him the ball. At least he caught it because there's nobody around him. So, let's see how the utilization is for Pitts. But he's obviously a huge target and something good. I like Kirk Cousins, though, because he's one of those guys kind of like Derek Carr, kind of streaky, but a little bit of a better streaky. So I like him to bounce back in this offense as he's getting a little more footing into it, to bounce back a little bit more in the secondary because the Eagles feel like they could get got a little bit there. But I'm a little nervous going with Bijan this week, but obviously I'm playing him anyway, but it's a little bit of a tougher matchup for him this week. And everyone on the Eagles side, you have to watch the A.J. Brown situation and all the superstars. You gotta play them. All right, let's finish the show tonight. We got it's how we're always going to close our Friday nights because that's the way we have themes to our shows. Obviously, Fantasy Jesus dominates Wake Up in the morning on Sundays. But on Friday nights, it's the breakdown. We missed it last week, but it's finally back. DJ Chuck Bass is going to play your fantasy hits.
TSS Nation, your boy DJ Chuck Bass is at it again. It's 2024 long shot season. Every week I'm going to be giving you guys players that are projected to score single-digit points or finish 30th or worse at their position, who I think are going to run train on defenses. So let's get to the stars of the show this week. J.K. Dobbins. You're probably asking, how the hell is J.K. Dobbins projected to score single-digit points after he just turned a great rushing defense inside out? I agree. No running back had a faster speed than 19.26 miles per hour last week, and that running back was J.K. Dobbins. Fire him up until he is off the menu. Secondly, Austin Eckler, our boy. We're going from the current Charger to an ex-Charger. The Austin Eckler sensation is back again. He actually led the Commanders in catches. A running back led the Commanders in catches. Who else but Austin Eckler? I think that's going to be a theme all season long as Cliff Kingsbury does not know what the fuck to do with a intermediate to deep passing offense. Lastly, Tony Pollard. Everybody said all offseason, who's it going to be? Tony Pollard, Tajay Spears, 1A, 1B, F you, F me. It was always Tony Pollard. The only problem was nobody wanted to spend a second-round price tag on him like we did in 2023. You're getting him in the 7th, 8th round. He's already returning value. He out-touched Tajay Spears 16-4 against what was the #1 rush defense in the NFL last year. Produced 16 points and a touchdown. I think that's going to be a theme for the entire season. The other theme for the entire season is going to be me bringing you the hits all year long. I'll be back in the studio next week. The lights will be bumping, the drugs will be flowing, and my eyes will be rolling in the back of my head. Kick some ass this week. DJ Chuck Bass out.
Thank you, DJ Chuck Bass. Go check out Chuck Bass on Twitter and all the great social media he's on. Thank you, Chuck, for that. We appreciate all of you. Jordan, thank you for the fantasy court. And, of course, to my co-host, LeDuc, for his sophistication station. Wake up with us on Sunday morning. We're going to have lots of good stuff for you. We got Bandy's Flex Starts of the Week. We got Ariel coming in with some good betting some good betting props as well. I mean, and, of course, we close it with Fantasy Jesus. I mean, there's just so much on Sunday. You got to wake up with us at 8 a.m. Thank you for all of your comments, subscribes, likes. We appreciate you, and we are out.